Hey guys, welcome back to the next part of the series. Today we're going to continue with the Aku Aku mask, so let's get to it. Before we do that though, remember that we have a special discount codes here on our comment section, and we're about to release the animation course. If you haven't checked that video out, go check the video from yesterday. So a little bit of a sneak peek there, showing you a couple of the exercises that we're going to be exploring and all of the tools that we're going to be discovering, so make sure to give it a look. Now, moving on to Aku Aku here. A lot of you have been asking me to do a proper retopology technique here on Aku Aku, and even though I would love to do it to show you the process, the proper process of doing a nice like game ready retopology, I don't think we're gonna have time for this in this project. So I will promise though that on the next full like course, or not course, like a mini project that we do, I am gonna do traditional retopology by hand for that specific asset, so that you guys can learn those techniques as well. So now, we already have UVs, so this guy is completely ready for texturing. This is where we left off last time. So I'm just going to select this guy. I'm going to go into File, Export Selection, and back in our asset folders here at Aku Aku, I'm going to create a new one called Aku Aku UV Ready, just to keep everything consistent and make sure that we have everything nicely laid out. Now, if you remember, we have the feathers here, but we're not going to be doing the feathers on the same material or on the same UV map. We're going to be doing them as separate pieces, and I'm actually going to be doing a little bit of a trick there to save some memory resources. So let's go on to Substance Painter. For those of you who are not aware, Adobe, the owners of Photoshop, After Effects, and all of the softwares, they bought Algorithmic 2 years ago in 2019, and a couple of months ago, I believe it was May this year, 2021, they've completed the transition into incorporating the Substance Suite into the Adobe Suite. So now this is the new Adobe Substance 3D Painter. If you have the version from Algorithmic still, it's perfectly fine. It will have mostly the same tools. There are a couple of extra new things here and there, but nothing like super major. So let's go here onto our Nexttut Live assets, and let's select our Aku Aku UV Ready. So we're gonna be doing 4K. I think 4K is gonna look very nice. I do want to take this guy into Unreal. I know I've mentioned this in the last couple of videos, so we're gonna take it into Unreal. I'm gonna try and see if I can do like a small animation and a follow of the character. And let's go here, and I'm just gonna hit OK. And there we go. We have Aku Aku here inside of Substance. Now, even though the object has no high poly, no, actually we do have a high poly. What am I talking about? We do have a high poly, so we're going to be doing a bake. I was thinking about another class that I had recently where we did bakes without a high poly, but we do have a high poly. So I'm going to go all the way down here into Bake Mesh Maps on the texture set settings, and I'm going to select 4K as well. It's not necessary to do it 4K, but it's going to look better. I'm just going to select this Aku Aku Sculpt High, and I'm just gonna leave it like this on default. So I'm gonna say bake selected, and what's gonna happen is the high poly details, all of the details that we sculpted in ZBrush, are gonna be projected onto the low poly surface. That way we can keep the details without having to have a super high amount of polygons. The only issue with this is that since I'm baking everything at the same time, you're gonna see that the ambient occlusion and some of the maps are actually contaminating each other. So if at any point I were to like raise the eyebrows, we would see some shadow being projected onto the top of the eyes of the character. Now, I'm not particularly worried about that right now because we're not going to be animating Aku Aku. It's going to be just like a solid box. But just keep that in mind. Keep in mind that sometimes when you do this sort of things, you're going to see like some extra shadow right there. There is a way in which we can... Should we do it? Well, I don't think we can do it right now, and the reason why we can't do it is because the object is one object. If we had it as separate objects, it would be easier to do it. So I'm just going to keep it like this for now. So let's start texturing. I'm going to bring up the Aku Aku image on my other monitor just to keep the general colors in mind. And the cool thing about this process that I'm going to show you is that we're actually going to be painting everything on a flat color. Like we don't want to have any roughness, any metalness or anything. Everything is going to be a flat color. We're going to give this a very like hand painted sort of like toon vibe. So let's get to it. I'm going to start by creating a fill layer here. And this fill layer is going to be very important because it's going to be my roughness layer. And even though I just mentioned that we're not going to have a roughness, I do want to have one basic layer that's the roughness is turned on all the way to the top. So now it's a flat material. You can see it here. If we were to lower this, the material will be like very reflective, very plastic. So I want to bring this all the way up so that it's completely flat. There's no and no glossy, no reflection, nothing. It's just a flat color. Now I'm gonna start building up the colors that we had before on the Maya scene, if you remember. So I'm gonna start again with a fill layer. I'm gonna call this dark brown. I'm gonna turn everything off here except for color because we only want color information from this layer. And I'm gonna select with the color sample the same like dark brown color that we have here in Maya. There we go. So that's my dark brown. Now I'm gonna Control G to group this guy. I'm gonna call this dark brown group. And I'm gonna right click at the black mask and I'm gonna mask out by using mesh fill. Number 4 is the fill tool. I'm gonna mask out the main like blocks of wood right there. Now, what I wanna do here is I wanna create a smart material that's gonna allow me to paint pretty much all of the wooden pieces in a fast way, in such a way that I only need to change the colors and everything else is gonna be just, it's gonna happen pretty much automatically. So what I'm gonna do is, this is gonna be my base color, and I'm actually gonna change the name here to base color. I'm gonna change this name also to tune wood, let's call it. There we go. So this is my base color. Now, usually when you have an object that has color, or just an object, it will get a little bit of dirt. So I'm gonna create a new layer here, fill layer, no elements here, and I'm gonna select a color that's slightly darker than this guy. I'm also gonna change the hue a little bit, so I'm gonna make the hue a little bit like purplish, just to get a little bit more of a different hue variation there. And this one, I'm gonna call it dark tone. I'm gonna right click the dark tone, add a black mask, and on the black mask, I'm gonna add a generator. And the generator is gonna be a dirt generator, which is gonna fill in all of the gaps, as you can see here. Now, the problem with this, as you can see, is that it's being very intense. So I'm definitely gonna lower the intensity a little bit so we don't have as much color, but you can see the color there, right? Like it's a little bit difficult to notice, but I'm pretty sure you guys can see it there. Now, I'm gonna change the blending mode in this color to something like an overlay, and that will definitely darken out everything else a little bit more. So now, as you can see, we got this very nice like dark streaks here and there. We can also like maybe like lower or up the contrast, up the intensity just a little bit, but I want to get rid of the grunge amount. I don't want as much grunge, so I do want a little bit of grunge. See there, just a couple of spots here and there, but not as much. You can see here on the front, it's a little bit more obvious. That's why you need to be very careful. So let's bring the levels a little bit down, maybe a little bit less grunge. There we go. It's just a little bit of an indication that we want here for the dark tones. Now we're gonna add a light tone. So I'm gonna go into my layers here. I am gonna turn everything off, and I am gonna sample again the color of the highlights of the wood, which is roughly that one. I'm gonna call this light tone. I'm gonna right click, add a black mask, right click on that black mask, add a generator, and we're gonna add now a metal edge wear generator, which is gonna hit, as you can see, all of the high points of the wood, and it's gonna give us this very nice effect. Now, usually the dirt, it varies, but sometimes the dirt is on top of the highlights because the dirt always accumulates, and the highlights you only get them when you hit the object. So I'm gonna keep that one there. Now I'm gonna go into the light tones, to the metal edge wear, and I'm definitely gonna lower the contrast because I want this to be very soft, very like hand painted effect. And one thing I like to do is I like to change the lighten from normal to linear dodge, which, as you can see, it's gonna kind of like burn in and create a nicer tone here. I'm also gonna change the tone to a little bit of a yellowish, just a tad bit yellow, something like that. And look at how nice that effect looks. I'm definitely gonna bring this thing down a little bit because I don't want this to be like super intense. So on a couple of details here and there, that looks good. And there we go. We have that very nice effect here. Now, the cool thing about all of this is that we've created these layers in a very procedural way. Procedural means that we're using just generators, black and white masks. We're not painting anything. We're just like adding effects on top of each other that are creating this effect. And the cool thing about that is that we can select this guy right here. I'm actually gonna get rid of the mask. So I'm gonna remove mask. Where is is it? Clear mask, and then remove mask. And this one, I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna create a smart material. Smart materials are it's a very, very useful tool here inside of Substance, because once you know you're gonna be doing something a lot, and you wanna keep it consistent throughout the whole element, keeping a smart material is gonna be really, really easy, because now, as you can see, we have this tune wood. I can just add a black mask, select again the 4 elements, and we're back in business, right? Back at the same place where we started. Now, if I drag this on top of the element, we're pretty much copying and pasting all of the tools, sort of all of the layers, the same layers, with the same generators, the same amount of overlay and linear edge and everything. So everything is exactly the same. Now we can add a black mask here, for instance. I'm gonna select the eyes, and now it's just a matter of modifying the base colors, which in this case, we're gonna go for like a green, and then like the light tone, it's gonna be this lighter green, and I'm gonna push it towards the yellow. So let's push it up. See that? See how it glows very nicely. And then the dark tones, I'm actually gonna keep the dark tones purple, because I think they make a nice combination there. And there we go. Like, we don't need to reset up the whole network or the whole little smart material here, because this basic tune shader that we did is already doing its job. Now I'm just gonna drag and drop our tune wood again. Let's do the nose now. Add a black mask. Let's go to the nose. And again, let's go to the colors. So the base color is going to be this sort of like yellowish, yellow-orangey, like that. Then the light tone, it's going to be this same yellow, a little bit of a different hue, a little bit higher there on the tone. And the dark tone, I am going to keep it purple. You can see it there on the back. So I'm pressing C here to go into channel mode, and you can see only the flat color, and that gives us a nice result. And once again, just drag and drop the tune wood, add a black mask, select this guy right there, and we're just gonna change the tones, which is this sort of like dark red. So it's pretty close to this one, just a little bit redder. So there we go. The light tone is the same one. Probably push it towards the... Actually, this one seems to be a little going towards like the white, so it's a little bit more like desaturated. So I'm gonna kind of desaturate it there, and I'm gonna keep the purple as well. Yeah, that looks good. It's actually kind of, it goes into the, like the yellows. It's weird. Let's try the yellow. Yeah, I think I like the yellow a little bit better. Looks more interesting. Now we're gonna go into our what's the word? The next one, which is the eyebrows. Black mask. Let's grab the eyebrows, and the eyebrows are also a shade of red. They're slightly different though. So let's sample this one. As you can see, it's kind of like an orangey red. We're gonna keep that dark tone right there, and this one, it does have this sort of like whitish tone. There we go. It's a little bit less or less saturated, a little whiter. Let's go with like a yellowish effect. There we go. So as you can see, we could, or we very easily textured the whole character here. Now the cool thing also is we can go to each individual part of the character. For instance, here on the main wood, I think I want to push this guy like closer to like the full color, and I'm gonna give it a little bit more light, just a little bit, just to see like the little bit of the scratches here and there. And there we go. We have a very nice base. I think we're missing the teeth though, so let's do the teeth real quick. So black mask, and the teeth are gonna be, oh, let's of course select them. There we go. Go into base color, and I'm just gonna select the base color of the teeth, which is that one. I am gonna keep the, well, actually in this one, I think I'm gonna go for like a brown color. Makes a little bit more sense. And then the light tone definitely needs to be like almost white. There we go, see that? So it pushes the corners very nicely into the character. And there we go. We have a very nice effect. Now, another very cool thing is, now that we have everything set up, we could go, for instance, to the main wood on the light tones and add a paint layer and use this paint layer to remove some of the effects. So I'm going to go here into my brushes. I'm going to grab like a dirt brush, like this soft dirt. And I can use this soft dirt to kind of like tone down some of the damage on the inner side here of the character, so that you don't have the exact same sort of effect everywhere. I can do the same thing for like the eyebrows. So on the eyebrows, let's go here, add a paint layer, and paint out some of the damage. That's gonna really help make sure that not everything is like completely damaged, right? There's gonna be a little bit of variation here and there. I'm gonna go back here, same for the back here. Let's get rid of some of the effects. There we go. And we're getting into a very nice position. Now that's not all. We have this very nice material here. I'm going to show you one more little trick that I learned, and it's very good before we jump onto the ice. I'm going to go all the way to the top, and I'm going to imagine that there's a light shining on this character. I'm going to say that this is a sort of like warm orangey light, something like this. And I'm going to add a black mask, add a generator, and I'm going to use a light generator. This one right here. So the light generator imitates or kind of like shows you how a light would shine on the character. If I were to rotate this like completely flat right here, you can see that this looks like if the light was shining from the top, right? Now, I don't want this to be shining from the top. I kind of want this to have like a front-facing angle. So I am going to twist this a little bit so that we get that sort of effect here. There we go. See that? Now we can modify the glossiness, either increase it or decrease it. And what I want is I'm gonna try and play with the light attenuation. There we go. I want to create a little bit of a gradient coming from the top, as you can see here. Like imagine like again, like if it's a light shining on top of the character, and if I change this into a linear dodge, or sometimes I can play around with this, guys. There are some of them that really push the light. It makes it seem like the light is actually like on top of the element. So I'm gonna keep it linear dodge, but I'm gonna keep it like really low, probably like a 15%. And it's kind of like if I were painting a lightning scenario on the character. So you can see it here. I'm going to see, which is flat color. If I turn this on and on, you can see there's a little bit of a gradient going here, and we can exaggerate this as much as we want. However, if we go like a little bit too overboard, things might look slightly weird. So right there, I think it doesn't look that bad. I would like to find another one. Let's see if we can. That one doesn't look bad, right? The saturation addition or signed addition, that one looks okay. Linear burn, we can try. Overlay, no, I think this one looks good. And now we can see, let's see if we can change like the tone here. Well, let's keep it really warm. There we go. So now you can see that it looks like there's a light shining on the character when there's absolutely, even if there's absolutely no light. So that, I think that looks good. Probably just a tad bit lower. I don't want as much saturation. There we go. Now we can do the same thing with a shadow. We can turn on or create a, oh, you know what else we missed on this one? We need to turn off everything here. There we go. Because it still had some sort of, like information there. That looks better. So now this one is going to be, we're also going to turn everything off because only one color. We're going to go with a dark red, not completely black, but just like very intense. Add a black mask. Right click, add a generator. We're going to do another light generator. There we go. But we're going to invert this. So it's going to look like the light's coming from the top, from the bottom. And we're also going to kind of like shine it in such a way that's slightly different, like this. Let's turn off the light just to focus on the shadow. Let's increase the highlight level. Highlight glossy. There we go. See how we're creating that sort of like cartoon shade there? And again, it's just on the texture. This is a flat texture that we're pretty much like using to create a little bit of extra depth and extra volume. So that's it. Now on this one, I'm definitely gonna lower it. I don't want as much shadow. But again, this is a flat color. Like it looks like a flat color because we're tricking the textures into making it seem like it's like toon shaded. There's of course ways to do like a real toon shader. This is a texture toon shader. But as you can see, this is working really nice. So I think we're in a really good position here. Now let's jump onto the eyes, which are going to be a little bit more complicated because we're going to be talking about a different channel. Usually when we're working with characters, we only have like normal, color, roughness, and metalness, which is the traditional metallic roughness workflow. Sometimes, on specific assets, we will add something called an emissive map. And emissive maps are maps that, as the name implies, will emit some light. They will produce light from that area, and it will affect not only the character, but also like the whole thing, right? Like the whole scene. So they could potentially illuminate a little bit of the scene. So what I'm gonna do here, first, I need to make sure this shader knows that it has an emissive channel. So I'm gonna go into texture set settings, all the way up here to the channels, and I'm gonna add an emissive channel. There we go. So you can see that the emissive is now added, but there's no emissive yet. We haven't painted any emissive. So I'm going to create a fill layer, and I'm going to immediately group it because I want to keep this clean and separate into its own group. I'm going to call this emissive. I'm going to right click, add a black mask, and I'm going to select the eyes to make them completely full with this layer. Now on the layer, I don't want color, I don't want normal, I don't want height, I don't want metal, and I don't want roughness. I only want emissive. And the emissive, you can see right now, it's off because there's no color being emitted. Now, on our original character, there's this sort of like white gradient going into like an amber yellow. So I'm going to start with the amber yellow. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to sample the amber yellow color. And I'm going to really saturate it because otherwise the light's not looking, or it doesn't look like there's light. So there you go. That's already an emissive. All of that mesh is already emitting some light. Now, it might be a little bit difficult to see, but if I go here into the eye array, which is the render that's native here to Substance, you're going to see that there are some particles being emitted. And the easiest way for me to show you that is by going here into the settings and lowering the environment exposure light really low. You can see that the eyes are actually emitting some light. But it's not emitting the light in the way in which I would like, which is like go into the amber to the sides or to the borders and keep like a very clean white shine on the center, right? So I'm going to go back here. Let's go back here to the options and bring the exposure back to 1, which is the basic one. And I am going to duplicate this layer, create a new layer here. And this layer is going to be completely white, like full white. Add a black mask. And on this mask, I'm going to grab my basic soft brush. And I'm going to paint in the area where I want, like in this case, I don't want any first. And then I'm going to want one right there and one right there. I'm going to go back here to bring the exposure down, and you can see how it looks now. Okay, so it is a little bit difficult to see, I'm not going to lie, but the emissive is now painted. And certain parts of the emissive are going to be a little bit more yellow, and other parts of the emissive are going to be a little bit whiter. Now, white is the highest you can go in regards to light, right? So I am going to bring the white down a little bit. And for this, I need to go into the emissive channel and bring this emissive down so that we don't overpower the yellow that we have. So it's still going to be like really white, but it's not going to be like completely white. It might not look like that right here because of the exposure, but it is working. So you can trust me, it is actually working. And there we go. I think that's it. Like that's just a quick rundown on how you can do this sort of thing. One more thing I would like to do is I might want to add a little bit more wood grain detail. So if I go into the wood materials here, you're going to see I have a couple of extra ones. I have this stylized wood planks, which could work, but I'm going to try to keep it like really simple. So I'm going to go with this wood rough, which I think looks very nice. I'm going to place it all the way on the top. And this wood rough material, as you can see, it's not rotated properly. So I'm going to go into the options. I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. And since all of our UVs should be as vertical as possible, you can see that we get this. Now, the only reason why I want this is because I want to use the color. I don't want the metalness, the highness, or the roughness. I just want the color, and not even the full color. I'm just going to probably use, let's go back to base color. I'm probably just going to use like a 5% or something of the color. Or we could even go into like some sort of like overlay or multiply. I think overlay looks good here, because I just want to bring a little bit, as you can see, a little bit of like the wood grain texture. It's going to darken the whole thing, which I'm not sure I really like. I mean, we can go here to the color and lighten it up. There we go. That way, as you can see, we're inheriting, or we're utilizing a little bit of that wood grain from the texture, and that creates a little bit of a more visually interesting piece. So any of the areas where we didn't have as much information, like here, that's very flat, now we have a little bit of that like wood grain and wood information that makes the whole thing look a lot nicer. And there we go. I mean, that's pretty much it for this texturing part. So I know we still have a little bit of time. I'm gonna go a little bit over our usual time in this last couple of videos. So I'm gonna save this real quick. Let's of course save it on our main project, which is here Nexttut live. Let's call this Aku texture. And I'm gonna export the textures because I know that I like the ones, I like how this guys look. So I'm just gonna say File, Export Textures, and I'm gonna export this into that same folder. So Nexttut live, assets, Aku, there we go. And we're gonna export them on the Unreal Engine 4 packed element, which if we check here the output or list of exports is gonna export all of these images right here. Now I usually like to export this guys on the Targa. It's a better quality, and size is fine, 4K is fine. So I'm just gonna hit export, and we're gonna have all of our exports out. We can open the output directory, and you can see it right here. Default base color, emissive, normal, and occlusion, roughness, metallic. There's 3 textures here that are being saved into one single file. We're gonna be talking about Unreal in the next couple of videos, so don't worry about that for now. Now let's close this and let's talk about the feathers. So the way we're gonna be approaching the feathers, if you take a look, most of the feathers are pretty much the same feather. It's just the same. It has a couple of like different nicks and knacks here and there, but it's pretty much the same. So if we do one feather texture, we can bend it, duplicate it, and change it slightly here on the geo portion of things and make sure it works as best as possible. So I'm gonna go into Photoshop, and we're gonna create the feather completely from scratch. And in the same way we only did a color for the character, which by the way, we're only gonna be using color in Unreal, I'm only gonna be using a color for the feather. So the way we need to do it is we need to find a feather texture that works for what we're doing. So I'm gonna look feather texture, and you're gonna see that we have like this sort of stuff, right? Now this of course are realistic feathers, and the Aku ones were a little bit more like tribal. So they had like this very sharp pointy area. So let's see, let's try and find something that works for what we're doing. This one's not that bad. Not like it that it's kind of stylized. It looks cool. I think we could work with that one. Just gonna keep looking a little bit more in case we find something. That one's even better. I think it has a little bit closer to what we're looking for. See, sometimes when you click on an image, you get something similar. Okay, let's try this. First, let's say if this image is actually a PNG, which if it is, it's gonna be great for us. It looks like it is. I am a human. That's a model, that's a model, that's a model. Hopefully I'm not downloading any sort of virus. Perfect. So yeah, awesome. This works great. And the reason this works great is now we're not gonna be using this one specifically, but we're gonna be using the alpha, this selection right here, which is exactly what I need. Now, unfortunately, we can't just take this image like it is, because if I take a look at the size is on pixels, it's not exactly what I'm looking for. So I'm gonna create a new file here, and it's gonna be 1024 by 1024. Now I'm gonna drag and drop this feather right here. I'm gonna Control T to transform. I'm gonna make it smaller. And the cool thing is, if we want to, we could create like a couple of feathers here. I think we can fit 2 feathers, and that way we're gonna have a little bit more variation. So I'm just gonna duplicate this guy right here. And what I can do is, using an eraser, like a sharp eraser, like this one, we can like erase a couple of extra bits and pieces here and there. It seems like someone actually did this for this image, because I can see some of the brush traces here and there. So let's just finish the job. Let's break up a little bit more here and there, just to make it slightly different from the other one. And when people see all of the feathers, they see different effects. So here, let's do like a nice little triangle. I think that one's a little bit too much. There we go. There we go. I really want to keep this like really, really sharp. So I'm making the brush smaller, and there we go. Now, as I mentioned, we're actually not going to be using these elements the way they are right now. We're going to be using them to get the alpha, and then we might use a little bit of the textures just to give a little bit more like visual interest to the whole thing. But the main thing that I want is I want the alpha. So I'm going to control click here and then control shift on the other one to select both alphas. I'm going to create a new layer, and on this new layer, I'm going to fill this thing with white. So you can see it's sitting on top of the elements. How did I do that? I would just press Control and Delete, and whatever is my background color gets filled. Now I'm going to press Control Shift I to inverse the mask. I'm going to press Control and Delete again. But before I do that, I'm going to press X to flip the colors, and I'm going to say Control Delete, and now we get this, which is a black and white mask that we're going to use to cut out the transparency on the feathers. Now, we can't keep this thing as a separate file. That's one option. But we could also save it on the alpha channel. Every image, or especially if you're using like a little bit more advanced images like a Targa, they can have an alpha channel and save some information there. And that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go here into the channels. I'm going to create a new layer, which is going to be my alpha. And then this layer right here, with my marquee tool, which is letter M, I'm just going to select the whole thing, press Control C to copy, go into channels, go into alpha, and press Control B to paste it. So we've pasted this information into the alpha channel. We can turn everything back on except for the alpha. We don't need to see that right now. And this one we can actually just delete. We don't need it anymore. Because now this image has an alpha channel that we're going to be able to access once we export the image out. Now I'm going to select this guy right here, and I'm going to fill it. I think it's the primary colors. We have like a purple, yellow, orange, and pink. So let's do purple. And I'm just gonna I'm gonna create a new layer actually. I'm just gonna fill it. There we go. And then what I'm gonna do is this one right here. We can do the sort of like overlay or look for one channel that looks good. For instance, this one, like look at that. Even the darken looks really, really good. And I'm just gonna lower the opacity because I don't want to have a little bit of texture, but I want the feather to be as colorful as the character, right? So as you can see, it's very, very colorful. Now I am just gonna do the same thing for the other feather. So just remember this one is set to darken 53%. Let's do 50 to keep it consistent. And I'm gonna go here, Control and click. I am gonna create a new layer and I'm gonna fill it with another color, which in this case is gonna be let's do the yellow. And this brings down. This is gonna be darken to a 50% opacity, and we get this very nice like hand painted texture on the feathers. Now we could create the 4 feathers in the same like make them smaller and create them on the same element, or I think it's a little bit easier to just create 2 texture sets, like one for each feather. A 1K map is not going to be that big of a deal, so I'm going to just say File, Save As. Actually, I'm going to save as copy the new Photoshop. They changed something. I hate it, but it is what it is. You can't save as easily. So this one's going to be a Targa file. Very important that this is a Targa. And this is going to be called Feathers A. We're just going to save it. Hit OK. And now we're just going to go to this color. I'm going to hit Control U to change the hue. And the other colors were orange and purple. So this one's gonna be like this sort of like orange. You might need to change the saturation slightly, or the lightness sometimes, depending on how you want the colors to interact, because they're not all the same colors. So that looks good, I think. And then this one, Control U, and this one's gonna be purple, right? So we go darker into the purple. There we go. And we're gonna save this. Control Alt S is the new shortcut to save a copy. We're gonna save it as a Targa as well, and this is gonna be Feathers B. Now, to properly set up these materials, we do need to go into Maya. This is gonna be the last part of this series. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to this guys right here. I'm gonna say Mesh Triangulate, just to make sure all of them are triangles. UV Editor. And let's do 2 at a time. So the first 2 are, actually, I'm just gonna grab all of them. I'm gonna say UB, and I'm gonna do planar mapping going from the Z-axis to make sure that it's just like a front photo. There we go. Now the first one was the yellow and the pink, right? So I'm gonna select those two. I'm gonna assign a new material. Let's do a Lambert. And on the color of the Lambert, I'm gonna insert a file. The file, of course, is gonna be on our Aku texture, feathers A. Hit open. Now if I press number 6, you're gonna see that transparency is already set up. So the only thing we need to do is we need to grab this object, go into the UV shell, check the image here, and make sure that we can match the UVs in the best possible way. Now the cool thing is we can actually move the UV vertices, and this will not change the geometry. So the geometry will read exactly the same. And we're just gonna have a very nice mask here. If we need a couple of more like points, we can also do that. But look at that. Pretty cool, right? So now this guy, actually this should have been the yellow one, that's fine. They're the same shape, so just move this thing to the side. And that's the yellow. We got the very nice yellow feather right there. Now it's a little bit different than what we had, but that's fine. One thing we can do is I could just go here, center the pivot point, make it slightly bigger so that the root of the feather is right there. See that? And we have the transparency and we have the colors, which is exactly what we're going for. Now we're gonna do the same with this one. I'm just gonna grab the UV shell, make it bigger, and I'm gonna capture the silhouette of the feather. If I need to modify a couple of the UVs, we can totally do it. Nothing's gonna destroy this. There we go. Same deal, we can go to the front view, just center the pivot, make it bigger so that it looks like it's actually coming from the element, and there we go. Very cool, right? So this is a very quick and easy way to do this sort of like effects. It also works with plants and stuff. So if you're doing like in a stylized tree, just do like flat planes, give it some form, nice transparent texture, and boom, there you go. Tree ready for you. Now, these two guys are the next ones. I'm just gonna assign a new material here. So another Lambert, color, file, and we're gonna add now the feathers B. And same deal, just gonna go here, UV editor. This is the orange one. So I'm just gonna move this to the side. Grab the UV. You don't want to deform it as much, but moving it just slightly shouldn't be a problem. You can see how it changes the way the texture populates the whole thing. It's the same deal here, just center the pivot point, make it slightly smaller. There we go. And finally this one. Just make it bigger, because we're making the UV bigger, but we're not making the geometry bigger. See what I mean? So that means that the texture space is changing, not the geo itself. So we keep the same small like feather up there, but we have a nicer feather in here. So we're utilizing the resolution a little bit better here. This one's also gonna need a little bit of a change here. And there we go. Our Aku is ready. Now, there's just to show you how all of this is gonna work, because I'm pretty sure several of you guys are like, I want to see the full thing. It's gonna assign a new material. Let's do a Lambert, and on the color, I'm gonna add a file node, and I'm gonna add the color node that I just exported from the Aku effect. Look at that beautiful guy. Pretty cool, right? So now the only thing that we're missing is the little feathers on the chin. We're gonna be doing those on the next video, because I actually need to do a little bit of sculpting. We're gonna be sculpting a nice little feather to get the best possible result. And then we're just gonna grab everything, bring it into Unreal, and let's see if we can make it work so that it floats right by the side of our character, similar to what we had on the game. So that's it for now, guys. Hopefully you've liked the video so far. Let us know in the comments what you think. If you find this helpful, I'm always super happy to read all of your thoughts. And yeah, if you have questions, leave them there. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you back on the next one. Bye-bye.